The final experiment has finally happened. After half a year of hype, Will Duffy's band of globe defenders have performed what they deem a death blow to flat Earth. So how did they do it? Did they find and measure the globe's mythical curvature? Did they film a convex horizon without using a fisheye lens? Did they circumnavigate in a perfectly straight line and return to their starting point? Or did they construct a demonstrable model of water sticking to a spinning ball? No. They didn't even attempt any of these things that flat earthers have actually called for and admitted would provide evidence for the globe. Instead, they made up their own strawman experiment and labeled it final, with the hope that their results would be the last words on the flat versus globe debate. Unfortunately for Will, and to the surprise of no flat earthers, the results of his experiment haven't changed people's minds and aren't the final words on anything. As I said would happen, back when this idea was introduced, in typical globe apologist fashion, the final experiment has conflated a celestial observation with our terrestrial foundation. They are attempting to claim that the motion of a light in the sky overhead somehow gives proof of the shape of the ground underfoot. Flat earthers warned them for months that this is simply a straw-man argument that isn't going to convince any critical thinkers, but still they went ahead anyway. Now they have allegedly traveled to Antarctica during the southern summer to film the midnight sun, and succeeded in convincing no one in the flat earth community to go back to the globe. As Will was warned, it's analogous to inviting a contractor to measure the dimensions of your floor space, but instead of taking measurements of the floor, he climbs a ladder and starts measuring the recessed lights in the ceiling. Then, after doing some calculations and extrapolations based on his ceiling lighting measurements, he tells you definitively that your floor is a spinning ball. The only reason flat earthers have claimed there likely isn't a midnight sun in Antarctica is because there are countless clearly genuine videos of the phenomenon in the Arctic, and only a couple dubious, doctored ones claiming to show a 24-hour sun in the south. If this is such a common and easily filmed phenomenon, why has it taken this final experiment to finally get footage of it? The jury is still out as more videos from the final experiment trickle in, but already there are anomalies and issues surfacing. For example, notice the extreme change in shadow length that takes place as McToon from the final experiment paces around the base camp. In the space of walking no more than 10 to 20 meters, while the sun is still quite high overhead, his shadow somehow triples in length. This is more what would be expected from a large overhead studio light than a heliocentric sun 93 million miles away. Personally, I am quite skeptical of both the footage and the people involved in this final experiment, but time will tell, as it always does. Now, let's assume all the videos of the Antarctic sun filmed by the final experiment crew are all 100% genuine and filmed in the exact location and time claimed. This still makes no difference to flat Earth. Whether or not they filmed an Antarctic midnight sun, still water remains level. The horizon remains flat, and there remains no measurable curvature. The Earth is still a level plane regardless of any solar observations. The motion of a light in the sky overhead cannot possibly prove the shape of the ground underfoot. The flat Earth community has long had models that explain a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, including Lady Blunt and Albert Smith's model in their 19th century book Zetetic Astronomy. More recently, Joseph Henvey has also done excellent work constructing a demonstration using lights projected off a dome firmament showing exactly how an Antarctic 24-hour sun works on flat Earth. Using a two-way mirror to demonstrate a superfluid ceiling inside a dome over a flat Earth map, a flashlight is shined down to represent the sun moving over and around the Earth. As the sun circles its way from the Tropic of Cancer to the equator and outwards beyond, there is only one spotlight appearing in the sky. But as the flashlight widens its circuit outwards towards the Tropic of Capricorn, suddenly a second apparent projected sun appears and begins circling the opposite direction over and around Antarctica. Not only this, but since the projection is only apparent, it is based on the position of the observer. so as the camera moves 360 degrees around the outer circumference of the model, the 24-hour sun still circles overhead regardless of where in Antarctica the observer is located. Due to the vastness of our realm and the nature of the projection, very rarely would anyone anywhere on Earth be able to see both the actual and apparent sun, but it has been captured on film several times. These videos, which are easily explainable in the domed flat Earth model, have no explanation in the heliocentric globe model. There is no reason why their giant sun 93 million miles away in outer space would ever show a projected apparent second sun. But we even have video showing both suns reflecting their lights into the water below. Since we cannot see the entire expanse of the planetarium sky above us, our eyes create an apparent sky dome, as shown here. Each person has their own unique sky dome perspective based on where and when they are observing from. We know this to be true from the fact that 3 people in 3 different locations will observe the same sun appearing differently. One will see the sun rising, another will see the sun setting, and another between them will see the sun at its apex overhead, proving that everyone sees their own personal perspective of the sun's current location, and not its actual location. This is also why all the stars in the celestial sphere move the same direction around us east to west, but depending on where the observer is located and what direction they're facing, a second circle of stars will appear moving around the other way. We can see Polaris, Ursa Major and Minor, and other northern constellations from every point north of the equator simultaneously, but conversely cannot see the so-called South Pole star, Sigma Octantis, the Southern Cross, or other outer constellations simultaneously from every point south of the equator, because they all sweep over a great southern arc from their rise in the evening to their setting in the morning. All of this just goes to show that regardless of what the sun, moon, and stars look like or what they're doing over our heads, has no bearing on what the Earth looks like or what it's doing under our feet. The final experiment straw man, whether the footage is faked or genuine, is simply an appeal to the sky fallacy, where these desperate globe apologists insist that a solar observation somehow proves the shape of our terrestrial foundation. The fact of the matter is, even Will Duffy himself, when asked point-blank about this issue, admits his supposed final experiment hasn't actually disproved flat Earth at all.
And I would put it to you like this. If there's a dome, if we're in an enclosed system, does that not mean that there are a whole lot of variables that we don't know about that could affect the lights in the ceiling?
Yeah, I can grant that.
As footage continues releasing, and astute internet sleuths continue analyzing anomalies and inconsistencies, it's becoming increasingly clear that the so-called final experiment's 24-hour Antarctic sun was just another faked event recorded on a film set. Unbeknownst to most, for the past few years, portable, panoramic, 360-degree LED studio setups now exist and are being used for Hollywood productions like The Mandalorian and many others. Amazon Volume, or Amazon Studio 15, for example, are state-of-the-art studios which take the standard of green or blue screen technology and completely blow it out of the water. With new 360-degree panoramic LED screen studios, the entire background and ceiling or sky are digitally created in Unreal Engine, then projected live in up to 16K resolution so the actors on set can see, react, and interact with everything in real time. Amazon's sets comprise 3,000 seamlessly connected LED panels 80 feet in diameter and nearly 3 stories tall, enclosing 130,700 cubic feet of interactive space. Keeping all this in mind, let's review some footage from the final experiment. To begin with, watch the supposed sun circling around during their 24-hour time-lapse video, and pay close attention to its shape. Notice how the sun changes from circular to being smushed down horizontally, back to perfectly circular, then smushed across vertically, and then back again. This is not how the sun usually looks or behaves in person, or in genuine footage of the phenomenon from the Arctic. Now, pay attention to the changes in length and direction of McToon's shadow as he paces around the base camp. In the space of walking only a matter of feet, his shadow somehow completely changes direction and triples in length. Watch as his shadow stretches, contracts, and sharply changes angles within the space of just a few paces. This is not at all normal behavior of shadows being cast by sunlight, or of a man walking only a few steps. The following is a simple demonstration of how light and shadows work depending on the distance of the light source. In the first example, the light source is held close to the action figure as he moves along the table, and we see quite pronounced changes in the length and direction of his shadow. In the second example, the light source is held farther away from the action figure as he moves along the table, and we see much less change in the shadow length and direction. In reality, the sun is much farther away in scale than this demonstration allows for as well, so even the amount of change seen here is being generous. A man walking such a short distance outside should never have a shadow that changes direction 90 degrees and triples in length. Now let's watch as McToon and Austin Whitsitt respond to commenters asking them to show their breath in the Antarctic. As they blow hot air out their mouths in freezing temperatures, there should be a cloudy mist that forms in front of their faces as the water vapor in their breath condenses. Instead, however, every time they blow, not a trace of fog appears. In Whitsitt's live stream, he claimed this was because the air was allegedly too dry there. Someone then asks him to pick up some snow, which he initially refuses to do because his hands would be too cold. So he turns his camera off, walks into the shed to grab some gloves, then comes back in front of the camera and exhales 1.5 breaths, which now mysteriously do show vapor appearing in front of his face, only to abruptly stop again. He says to the camera, "There's a little breath. What's up now?" As if somehow proving the skeptics wrong, and claiming that he took a sip of water in the shed, which was supposed to account for it. Another camera, recording from a different angle, however, caught Whitsitt while exiting the shed, doing what appears to be hitting a vape pen just before turning his camera back on. For comparative purposes, here is what someone's breath looks like during winter in Maine, USA. Every time you exhale, there is a visibly noticeable cloudy fog that condenses from the difference in temperature between the hot air in your lungs and the cold air outside. So after exhaling his vape hit into the camera, rather than picking up some of the snow that was all around him, for some reason, Austin walks several feet away and picks up a bit of snow from over there, then walks it back to the camera and lets it fall to the ground. If snow is everywhere all around him, why did he have to walk way over there to get some? Anytime close-up footage of their feet was shown, their footprints always failed to make any impression in the snow. Here he moves his left foot, and there is no impression, footprint, or displaced snow. Another thing apparent while watching the footage was the complete lack of wind or any precipitation whatsoever. Throughout the live stream footage, I don't recall a single instance of any wind or even a light breeze strong enough to affect their hair or microphones. Even on a calm, sunny day, if they were really outside and not in a studio, we should see or hear the effect of wind on their bodies or microphones, but it was mysteriously absent the entire time. Jaron, Whitsitt, and others involved also made comments several times about how the mountains in the distance seemed so close that you could touch them, but that they were actually several miles away. The mountains do seem strangely closer than they should appear, and if you pay attention to where the background and foreground meet in footage from the final experiment, particularly the 24-hour sun time-lapse, it seems we are seeing where the digital backdrop ends and the studio floor begins. There is a separation line indicative of a film set apparent in much of the footage and made clear through the use of video editing technology. By adjusting the contrast, it becomes clear where studio reality meets digital fakery. In the 24-hour time-lapse sun footage, the mountains and sky are both chroma keyed out, showing they are both part of the studio backdrop. Compare this to other footage taken at Union Glacier. When chroma key is applied, only the sky disappears, leaving the real mountains untouched. This makes the case that the final experiment is potentially a mixture of doctored studio footage to fake the 24-hour sun and other authentic footage actually taken from Union Glacier, Antarctica. The founder of this final experiment, Pastor Will Duffy, has also had a recent clip surface from a sermon of his that gives some real insight into the mind of the man behind this production.
Okay, we finally get to my conclusion on the matter of lying and deception, and that is this. After carefully looking at both sides of the debate, and after taking a very deep dive into everything I could possibly find in Scripture regarding lying and deception, I have come to the conclusion that neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.